The 1920s was not only an exciting era of jazz, production, and stocks, it was also a stepping stone for creating the modern womanhood that we see today. Flappers of the 1920s redefined what it meant to be a lady in every way as the rebellion spread across the US. Originally used in Britain to describe a young gawky woman or a young prostitute, the term flapper was adopted by many women in the early 20s. Some iconic looks of the common flapper included the bob. This hairstyle quickly grew in popularity among these vivacious girls. Originally worn by Irene Castle, the bob was meant to serve functionally rather than fashionably. Irene was a popular tap and ballroom dancer who chopped off her locks to reduce the hassle of long hair while dancing. The look was seen on every famous flapper of the 1920s as their first act of rebellion against society. Another famous portrayal of a flapper was the calf-revealing dress. Though we no longer consider this to be a short dress, during the early 1900s, a dress of this length was obscene. By flaunting more leg and collarbone, these women broke the stereotype of an American wife in an ankle-length skirt. Binding was another popular trend among flappers. It was essentially a very tight corset meant to flatten and reshape a woman's body. By lowering the neckline, dresses revealed more of the chest. The typical bustier was meant to emphasize a woman's curves, whereas binding corsets eliminated curves altogether. Ads started to pop up left and right in the 1920s advertising these products, but simple medic wraps and tapes were used too. Binding as a trend quickly faded, but it's reappearing today. The pastimes of flappers were often viewed as scandalous, as they were seen drinking and smoking in public, which was absolutely absurd to prohibitionists. The 18th Amendment did not damper the wild spirit of flappers, as more became adorned with flasks tucked into their garters. This also brought about the popularity of speakeasies among flappers, as they were a safe place to drink and smoke without criticism. Often surrounded by admiring male suitors, some flappers earned their fame as entertainment on speakeasy stages. Some famous figures in flapper culture included Clara Bow, or the It Girl. As an American actress and a trending flapper, her presence could not be ignored. She rose to stardom in the silent film It. Her bobbed hair and flashy clothing exemplified flapper culture. Another example would be Zelda Fitzgerald. She was known as the first American flapper, as dubbed by her husband F. Scott Fitzgerald. She and her husband became emblems of the jazz age, for which they've been continuously celebrated. As quoted by Zelda Fitzgerald, "Excuse me for being so intellectual. I know you would prefer something nice and feminine and affectionate." Another very prominent and widely known name would be Coco Chanel. Her presence in the 1920s obviously left its imprint. Her French designer fashion lives on today in the high-end Chanel brand. She sported the common bob and wore shorter dresses, but other than that, she wasn't much of a flapper. Her clothing lines, however, were draped across flapper culture in all forms. Her influence in flapper culture also helped grow the perfume industry, which is still popular today in the form of Chanel No. 5. Coco is quoted as saying, "A woman should be two things, classy and fabulous." Of course, the flapper movement had many critics, in the form of politicians, prohibitionists, and most importantly, other women. Popular DC hostess Mrs. John B. Henderson tried to start a movement against what she considered to be vulgar fashion, which was targeted at women's clubs and colleges. Some women's rights activists, such as Charlotte Gilman and Lillian Simes, claimed the flappers had gone too far in their reform. This movement lost wind suddenly along with the stock market crash, as this expensive lifestyle was out of reach of most women. The flapper fashion, however, left its effects on women's fashion, where skirts were often mid-calf or knee length, and all hair lengths were being accepted. Without this dramatic rebellion against housewife standards, the women's rights movements wouldn't have had such a lasting impact, nor would women be accepted as individuals so swiftly. Though the American housewife image would eventually return, it was more acceptable for women to wear pants or knee-length dresses.